Okay, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before we begin, I wish to acknowledge that we are privileged to meet on the Stalo unceded traditional territory of the Puyallup, Chilliwack, and Samath. The board also acknowledges the marginalization that many members of our community have experienced, whether as a result of race, sexual orientation and gender identity, or other personal circumstances. The board is committed to providing a working and learning environment that recognizes the inherent dignity of all persons, that is inclusive of all, and that treats everyone with respect. Okay, trustees, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Trustee Reed, seconded by Trustee Westerby. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the agenda as circulated? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes, please? Trustee Bondar, seconded by Trustee Westerby. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as circulated? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. All right, trustees, so we are moving on to 2.1. This is a delegation presentation of the school-based mentoring program. And who is introducing our speaker today?
Oh,
I think looks like Secretary Treasurer is going to take this.
So today we have Cheryl Unger from, I hope I said your last name correctly, I didn't check, from Big Brothers, Big Sisters, joining us for a presentation. So I'll turn the mic over to you.
Oh, sorry, just press your right-hand button. There you go.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and present to the Board of Education here in Chilliwack. We are pleased to use this opportunity to provide a brief overview, I hope it is, that our organization is doing within the Chilliwack School District. My name is Cheryl Unger, and I am the Program Manager at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I've been working with the organization for 30 years. This may lead you to think one of two things, that I'm either not a big fan of change, or that I really love what I do. Well, in this case, both of these statements are completely true. Also, my colleague Candace Cragen is here with me tonight, and she manages our in-school mentoring program, as well as our community mentoring program in Chilliwack. She has been involved with our agency for close to 5 years. So our combined years of service should confirm that Big Brothers Big Sisters is an amazing place to work. Our local agency has over 50 years of experience in creating empowering and life-changing relationships for children and youth who face adversity. Throughout the years, our free programming has evolved to meet the changing needs of our youth and families and our volunteers. Our national theory of change perspective allows us to be more intentional with our mentoring relationships and solidifying our impact with measurable outcomes. Young people graduate our programs with measurable outcomes in social emotional competence, mental health and well-being, and educational engagement and employment readiness, which I'm sure all of you here are mostly focused on. In fact, we are currently conducting our Big 3 Growth Survey across Canada with caregivers and mentees, which tell us the skills and the resources that have grown out of a result of our mentoring programs. We're excited to receive these results shortly. Our programs are grounded in intentional and purposeful relationship building with youth. Mentoring is an intervention that remaps brain's architecture and a process which sets a child up for a lifetime of resilience, positive social interaction, and academic and career readiness. Excellent. Yes, perfect. And if we want to keep going to the next slide. Thank you. This just gives a snapshot of the amount of volunteer hours that we've invested in the Chilliwack community. You may not be aware of our presence as individuals in your schools, but we know that if our mentoring services were not made available in your schools, it would become apparent. We have been working hard behind the scenes, offering our school-based programming well before 2010. When the former Chilliwack Big Brothers Big Sister agency amalgamated with Big Brothers and Sisters of the Central Fraser Valley. Since then, we have dedicated a full-time coordinator to provide professional mentoring services during the day as well as after school hours. The numbers listed here provide a sense of the community investment made by dedicated volunteers in Chilliwack as well as our agency resources. These services are offered free to the district and to the students and our families. I can assure you that if our mentoring programs were not made available to students, that the deficits would be obvious to our school personnel. And in fact, a youth care worker in the district captured the essence of our work and its impact. Marcus and Brandon have really come a long way in the course of their friendship. They seem to mutually benefit from the friendship in the true sense of the word. Marcus is doing great this year. He seems more connected to the adults around him. His peer social connections seem to be healthier, and he is smiling a lot more. This next slide gives you a breakdown of where our matches are happening and the scope and the depth of our programming. We have currently 88 students in the district meeting with a mentor on a regular basis. And you'll see there we have our in-school mentoring program, our HSAT program, which I'll explain in a little bit, and our after-school group programs. To give you a little understanding of what those programs do, our in-school mentoring program uses adult volunteers as well as teen volunteers to provide emotional and friendship support to elementary and middle school students who are not reaching their full potential. Our school-based programs have been uniquely designed to fill in the gaps in service by targeting students with low to moderate needs. Mentors meet with a student that they are paired up with for the school year, 1 hour each week on school property only. Having the friendship and encouragement of a mentor can give students the courage to raise their hand in class, ask questions, and make some good choices for their future. Overall, this program is a valuable complement to the school system and often enhances a student's openness to the school experience overall. A recent comment from a student over this past year said, "When I get to see my big buddy at school, my life is so much better because it's less stressful at school." The Human Services Career Enrichment Program is maybe new for many of you. So briefly, I hope to kind of capture the essence of what it is because it's really unique, and your Chilliwack Senior Secondary School is really doing an amazing job with this particular program. So HSEP is what we like to call is a joint project with community partners. Our agency, Big Brothers Big Sisters, the Chilliwack Senior Secondary, and the University of the Fraser Valley. MCFD was also involved in the preliminary and growth of it. It's just recently, over this past year, that they withdrew their partnership based on capacity. Human Services is offered to youth in grades 10 to grades 12 who are registered in the psychology class at the Chilliwack Secondary. This program utilizes a multi-level mentoring model, and it aims to create a reciprocal learning opportunity where a university student acting as a mentor supports a high school student, then those high school students mentor elementary students. Pretty innovative. The goal of the program is to encourage high school students to grow in their social emotional intelligence and be transformed through skill development and personal discovery. How it works is these students sign up who are in a part of a psychology class. They attend 8 Saturday full-day sessions, a part of gaining some WEX hours. And they participate on those 8 sessions with our mentors and learn a variety of different human service components, whether it's peer counseling, financial and media literacy, trauma-informed care, Indigenous history, human rights, and so much more. There's a lot of rich learning that takes place on those additional full-day sessions. In addition, those high school students in grade 11 and grade 12 have an opportunity to go practice their new skills into your elementary and middle school sessions. And we call that our BSER, Building Social Emotional Resilience. And so they take a leadership role, those high school students, in delivering their acquired, and they get to practice their skills, which aims to improve the mental health with the young people in those elementary classrooms and decrease the stigma associated with mental health concerns. The high school students take a lot of care in the preparation and the delivering of the curriculum, and our volunteer mentors, they shadow and assist those high school students within the classroom as needed. It's a win-win all around. I need to give a good shout out to Principal Danielle Wicker, psychology teacher Amanda Porter, and inclusion teacher Matthew Ferris. They're all critical in helping to support this program. And lastly, the after-school group program runs for 2 hours for 8 weeks in a row in one of your local elementary schools, typically targeting grade 5 students. And really, this is a critical time as they transition into the middle school. Groups consist of 8 to 12 students, and we are running a curriculum that focuses on creating a safe and fun environment for these young people to gather, but also build skills that cultivate personal wellness and growth. So that gives you an idea about that. In terms of some of the challenges that we have faced, obviously, we are all aware of the significant impact that the pandemic has had on all sectors of society. Education has really been one of the hardest hit. And so, big brothers and sisters across Canada, we have seen a sharp decline in student referrals from schools because education is your top priority. We know as we're coming out of the pandemic, the need for supportive relationships has never been greater. And we as an organization are positioned well to help to respond to that need. This year, with the help of supportive school liaisons in the Chilliwack schools, we are happy to say that student referrals have actually come pretty quickly and based on our availability of mentors available. The challenge we have faced, however, is that usually some of our high schools are not always located near a close partnership school. So you have these teen mentors who are already juggling a very busy class schedule, needing to leave their school during this class time to go and mentor, and now they're having to drive. And so that creates some challenges for them. Our programming goals over the next 2 years is to return to our pre-pandemic numbers, aiming for 45 school-based matches, 85 Human Services Career Enrichment Program students, and running at least 4 after-school programs in a year. The barriers to achieving these goals are twofold. Program capacity with the current casework numbers. Candace works very hard, and we need to increase the funding to increase those program hours and a significant increase in our volunteer recruitment so that we can make those matches possible. Next slide, please. Wonderful. As a community partner, we are committed to supporting the evolving needs of families, and we have looked at the results of the recent MDI instrument conducted with grade 4 and grade 5 students in the Chilliwack School District. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with your numbers. The one that I wanted to point out before moving on is the Well-Being Index. And 40% of Chilliwack students in grade 4 and 52% of Chilliwack students in grade 7 fit into the low well-being category compared to 36% and 48% respectively of children across BC. As a community partner, the outcomes of our mentoring services would certainly be considered value added for your educational system, and we are a critical piece in responding to the needs of your students. Our mentors are trained, they're coached to focus on incorporating the 5 elements of a developmental relationship, where intentional relationship building and social emotional support is commonplace. The MDI data is informative and a helpful tool in how we can collectively work together to meet the needs of our students. And at the last slide here, I trust our short presentation provided a solid overview of our commitment to strengthening our partnership with the Chilliwack School District and our vision to help respond effectively to the changing needs of your students. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And if you had any questions for Candace or myself, we would be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Can you just press your button? Thank you. Trustees, does anyone have any questions? Oh, Trustee Pond. Oh, Trustee Moss, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I know it's a great organization. You do wonderful things for the kids. I'm really happy to see the human, what is it?
Human Services Career Enrichment Program.
Right. Because I believe that goes back even to teacher Joe Ogmanson and also Steve Anderson. And so we were worried that it wasn't going to continue. So thank you so much for continuing that program. It's very valuable.
In fact, Joe is still
sorry,
involved.
just hold on one second. Trustee Moss, press your button.
In fact, Joe is still involved, and he presents and leads 3 of the peer counseling sessions. We're they're very involved, and they're actually the ones that started the program with their vision.
Bondar, you had your hand up before.
yeah.
Sorry, Trustee Reed, I'll come to you.
Thanks. I also just wanted to echo some of Trustee Maz's statements. This was a brilliant presentation. I love the work that you're doing. I specifically love the ability for older students to mentor younger students. That is so key to solidifying those skills and giving them that confidence. That's all I wanted to say. I don't even have any questions. It was just an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Trustee Reed.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I actually spoke with some of the career, the HSAP. I spoke with them at Chilliwack Senior when I attended an event, and they had amazing things to say. So they're out there spreading the word and the education on that. I just had a question about sort of from an inclusion lens. How do you handle gender diverse students and people that might have kind of diverse needs?
Well, as you can imagine, our schools are filled with a diverse population of young people, and we have mentors and we have students that fit with with every category, and particularly in our human services career enrichment program, it is a diverse group of individuals where I feel. I was there for the wrap-up session in April, and I really feel voices are heard, voices are encouraged, and the expression of identity is actually celebrated. So if there was an opportunity to have trustees and school personnel come to some of those sessions, you would quickly see that individuality is celebrated.
Thank you so much again for your presentation. We really appreciate it and all the work you do for our district. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to we have another presentation tonight, 2.2, Memiathal. I believe
Assistant Superintendent David.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Assistant Superintendent Manuel is going to introduce.
Thank you. I'm mostly tech support today, and actually Brenda Point, District Principal for Indigenous Education, is going to introduce our guests and start us off.
Hey, Swale, thank you for the invitation here this evening. I am privileged to introduce our team from Memiathal here tonight. They are a team that is providing mentorship to Indigenous specific students who are walking away from school from grade 7 through grade 12. This has been a long-standing program that Indigenous Education has been funding, and we have the privilege to hear from our lead. We have a staff member, and we also have a recipient of the program who's going to be able to share a bit about what he has received and how it has helped him move forward in school. So over to our team. Brianna Miller is our lead, and she has been with us since 2012 to be able to lead this program to where it is today. Bridget Boyer is one of our mentors, among others, and Delmar Plowman is our student this evening. So thank you. Over to you.
And we also have Shirley Prang here. She's part of our team. She's not good with this. Asoel, Brianna Militelsqui, Talitza Kwal Chiam. I'm Brianna Miller. I'm from Chiam First Nation. I'm here today with a few of our team members and one of our young people, Delmar, which will tell you a little bit more in a minute. I know Rohan had an opportunity to share a little bit about our program a little while back, so I'm not going to get too much into specifics, but just give you a little bit of a refresher. So our program, Memiathal, is a program under Youth Services at Stella Service Agency. It is a Halkamalam name for helping others be well, and specifically in our context, that's youth. The ultimate goals of our program are for life promotion. We want young people to want to live, for young people to have a strong sense of identity, to be proud of who they are and where they come from, to have self-love and acceptance and ongoing resilience and perseverance as they move through life's challenges. Engagement, positive relationships, and connections are pivotal to our program. So we strive to make every interaction that we have count with youth, and we hope to contribute to a longer trajectory as they age into adulthood of wanting to engage with community supports. Our program is guided by cultural teachings. It's embedded into everything that we do in our program. We don't have cultural components, and we're not trying to tokenize a program to make it have Indigenous things. It's truly led by our teachings and our values. Since the implementation of our Mamiatal program, as Brenda said, in 2012, when we first started, the goal was to assist with the Indigenous learners, and the grad rate at the time was 55%. We played a small part in helping get to where it is today at 77%. 85% of the referrals that we received come from the school district, so we do have a very strong partnership here. And by the end of this year, we'll have supported 52 of the district's most vulnerable learners to graduation, including this guy. This is Delmar. Today we're gonna share, we're gonna storytell about his time with us. We pre-recorded an interview with him. But before that, we just want to give you a little bit of context about his time. So Delmar was referred to us in 2019 from his social worker at the time. Unfortunately, we have really large wait lists in our program, and he was on the wait list for 2 years until we could work with him in 2021. He started with Elise, who was with our program for probably 8 years and is now a teacher in your district. And then he moved to another support person, Nick. He's attended in the last few years Chance Swatha Tilthit, and now he's at Queekle Secondary School, finishing grade 12. He actually just completed all his work requirements in this last week. Delmar has been no stranger to the district office here. He's familiar with some of you and you him. He's had a large multidisciplinary team across lots of our community supports to help get him to succeed here in the district. And we were talking today, and it's allowing young people right to that bitter end moment and those possibilities. We have to give them. He's in his 19th year now, which is his absolute last ability to be in the district chair as a student, and he's used every minute to get to where he is today. So he's very grateful. I'm just gonna share with you, with Delmar's permission, the referral that came in for him in 2019. So this was written by his social worker at the time. So presenting issues were that Delmar lives with his grandma, and he is disrespecting her, bullying her, not following rules, drinking, skipping school, and his grandma is at a loss with how to help him. Delmar would benefit from traditional teachings, coming of age, growing into adulthood, respect for his elders, etc. Him and his grandma have expressed interest in the Aboriginal mentorship program because he doesn't have any positive, male specifically, role models in his life. The risk factors are that he associates with other high-risk youth. Delmar is known to drink underage and be intoxicated often. He has learning challenges and is involved with youth probation. So we want to share this video from Delmar to share about the work we do, which has a lot of themes and highlights the journey we're on with a lot of the young people. And afterwards, maybe Delmar can answer any questions or comments that you might have.
Sure.
Thanks. Do you want to sit down?
Any questions for Delmar or comments?
Yeah.
Just before we do that, I just want to say thank you so much for that presentation. I think on behalf of the board, I think I was looking around, everyone was definitely engaged and really moved by that presentation. And Delmar, I just want to tell you that it takes so much bravery to be so honest about your circumstances and share them for the benefit of everybody. And a lot of full-grown adults wouldn't be that brave. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Sorry, trustees, I didn't see the order. So, Trustee Reed.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. Congratulations so much on that accomplishment, and thank you for your vulnerability. I understand what that takes. I really appreciated that you called out communication styles and learning to communicate with different people. That's something a lot of people go all the way through the school system with and never experience, so that's fantastic. Could you expand or tell us a little story about the part that you're able to now support others? That really interested me.
Yeah. I've definitely come far with a lot of good and bad people, and I realized that a lot of the other youth around me, and my peers, and even the younger ones, whether I wanted them to or not, whether I told them it wasn't a good idea, they've looked up to me in a pretty high sense. So I myself, sometimes when I'm in those dark places, I never understood how to bring them up if they're also in a dark place, and I feel the program has definitely offered me a kind of like I said, it was almost like a sense of side therapy, like a new way of approaching things and looking at things. I guess more specifically, I was able to communicate the express my I guess emotions to them, show them that whether it's relatable to them or not, it is. That they're not the only ones there. It seems to be a common thing. Like you wouldn't understand. That everyone says that a lot, and I tell them, I may not understand your situation, but I understand that we all go through a lot of stuff, and I tell them, we may not be in somewhere where it's a fear to just walk outside your door, but it is still a fear to walk outside your door in many other senses, right? And just taking that step, those steps to come out, is, yeah, I realized that a lot of these kids and youth, and that I've been able to actually, take the time and hear me out. I've realized just by me hearing them out has sometimes even just been enough for them to, realize that they aren't in it alone. And I will always thank the program for being able to show me that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Trustee Bondar?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Delmar. What a brilliant speaker you are, actually. And I appreciate how you have the ability to address the room. And I love that you talked about in the video your work reaching out to others, and in merely existing now, you are a role model for others, and that's not something that can ever be taken away from you. That is what you've done, and that's incredible. You mentioned something in the video that all they want from me is to succeed, and I wonder, when did you come to that? What happened that really solidified that for you? Yeah, could you expand on that?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I feel kind of how I mentioned, I didn't really want to, get up and go do all these things. I didn't trust that it would be a positive outcome. I started realizing, like, even if I tried my hardest to show that I didn't want to be there, or I could do it, but I don't have to do it kind of sense, right? They really just were extremely persistent, and even schooling, like I'd be concerned about not being able to have enough time to have a shower and go to school and all that, and then they said, well, that's fine, we'll sit here in the car, and sometimes I'd make them sit out there for like 20 minutes while I take my sweet time, and they never showed any signs of really like, oh, like, come on, hurry up, like stress about that, and regardless of if I've already eaten something, you know, like a sandwich, they'd be like, hey, like, let's go get you some food. It's not good to, you know, learn late. And those little steps end up leading to bigger steps that I realized that they have only really wanted, I mean, that they aren't just there for money, that they aren't just there for, you know, to get their business growing or whatever. Like, that's obviously a crucial part of it, but it's the fact that they were there for us, that they would allow us to have the choice of, you know, did you want to come out, or would it be better to come another day? You know, we could even just go drive around and talk, you know, let us listen to our music. All those little things very much added up to a bigger picture for me, and I guess I just embraced it, and I do not regret it. Yeah.
Trustee Westerby?
Delmer.
Sorry, can you just press
Oh,
the...
yeah, sorry. There we go. Yeah, Delmer, I just wanted to say I'm really appreciative of your courage and your vulnerability to come forward and share your story, not only with us, but with the whole community. And I'm really proud of you for investing in yourself. And because you've done that, and because you've come here and you've shared the incredible importance of the Mimiathal program. And I just want to say that I support this program and I support you, and I'm really, really, really thankful for you coming here today and for speaking to the importance of this program.
Thank you.
Trustee Prosek?
Yeah, there's two words that were used: persistence and trust, and I think that's a winning combination. My question to, maybe this would address you, Brenda, but my question is that I understood that it took a couple of years before you could get into the program. Is there a reason for that? Is there a lack of resources, or is there a lack of staff?
Well, all of the referrals, just so everybody in the room understands how that comes to be, is we have our district resource team for elementary, middle, secondary. And when schools have exhausted everything that they can do for those students at the school, that's when the referrals come to us. So that has increasingly been the issue, because there are more students being referred than ever before. And there are so many seats that are available through the mentorship program. The program is funded by us, Indigenous Education, through the school district. There is minimal funding that comes from probation, MCFD, and just recently Fraser Valley Child and Family Services has put some dollars in, because the clientele that's being taken care of here is students from our district, First Nations, on-reserve, off-reserve, Métis, Inuit. We have children in care. We have children and seats that for those children who are in trouble with the law. But getting back to the specific question that you asked, there are limited seats. So without more funding, we cannot accommodate the waiting list that is sitting there. So I just looked back at our data from 2013, and at that time there were 6 students on the waiting list. Now we probably have close to 50 students sitting on the waiting list. So we know that since 2012, this has met the need. We have the data that shows the graduation rates are being impacted. However, we also know that there's a greater need for this kind of specific Indigenous focused cultural programming for students such as Delmar. And I know that Delmar has taken some of those cultural teachings to heart, because I've heard about the swims that they're going on to the mountain, giving thanks for what we have. So I think there's lots embedded here for these students, and it's unfortunate that we have the waiting list as we do. So hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Trustee Moss?
So Delmar, I'll bet your grandma's proud of you. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing your story with us. So what are your plans moving forward?
Well, I've been asked this since elementary, and I wouldn't have a specific answer, but I have recently acquired a job and wanted to get more funds, and then I also, I guess now that I've finished schooling, I'm just waiting for the graduation, and I've been asking myself that too, what my plans are. Definitely from this point on, it's going to be good, for the better of all things. And I currently, if you were to ask me about my plans right now, I just want to make money and support my grandma and little sister, and then after that, I guess I'm kind of just living my life, and once they're okay, I'm gonna go on my own, but until then, I'm kind of just living it to live it.
Thank you, that's the most perfect answer ever.
Thank you.
Sincerely, I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much again. Really, really appreciate it, and just an amazing program. So thank you so much. Okay. Oh, and sorry, any presenters who are here, you can stay if you want to watch our whole board meeting, but if you would prefer to leave, you're welcome to also have the rest of your evening to yourselves. Trustees, moving on to information items. 3.1 is Budget Advisory Committee report. This would be.
Send something out to him.
Oh, okay.
That's basically.
Oh, sorry, never mind. I see that there's a little thing happening here. Thank you so much. Okay, so moving on to 3.1 Budget Advisory Committee report. This is Trustee Swanky, correct?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just taking a minute here. Thank you very much. The Budget Committee met on May 4th. Those minutes are before you. The committee debriefed from the budget assumptions presentation put to the board on April 18th before reviewing information we'll receive in the quarterly financial report and the preliminary 23-24 budget presentation later this evening. Members put several questions to staff that helped in reviewing the information. I would like to thank committee members for their work in supporting the board and the district. I'd like to draw particular attention to community reps who have reached the conclusion of their 2-year term in the committee, and student reps who will be graduating in just a few short weeks. Many thanks to each of you for your contributions. The committee will reconvene in the fall, and that's everything from my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we're moving on to 3.2 Education Policy Advisory Committee report, which is also Trustee Swanky.
Thank you, Chair. This will be brief. The committee continues to meet via Zoom and complete the work of the policy review. This evening we have the minutes from the April 17th committee meeting. At the April 17th meeting, proposed policy 315 was recommended for consideration by the board. That policy will be considered later this evening when we reach 4.4.1 in our adopted agenda.
Thank you very much. Okay, on to 3.3 Quarterly Financial Report. Secretary Treasurer.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to give a very high-level report verbal report out on the quarterly financial results. And the reason is because the full package is actually in the board package that was distributed along with a commentary. So just a couple of high-level things. You'll notice the comparison that we've been using this year is the, is everything okay? Yeah, okay. It's the internal amended budget because that reflects the full impact of the labour agreements that were reached in the fall. It also reflects the full impact of funding that we expected to receive. It. You'll probably remember when we did the amended budget, we were a little bit cattywampus on all of that, but that's why we're using that comparison. And using that, you can actually see that the revenue from the province is tracking to where we think it is. We've got a few other categories of revenue that are coming in stronger than we expected. International, we've had more students enroll than we projected. Interest rates have been higher than, as everybody probably is aware, than they were at this time last year. So revenues are just a tad higher, but because most of it's from the province, it's pretty much on budget. On the expenditure side, you'll notice that the teachers, PVP, that's principals, vice principals and other professionals, are pretty much tracking right on budget. and the EAs and support staff are significantly under budget. And part of the reason for that is because the retro payment for the labour arrangements reached in February this year hadn't been paid out. Well, in fact, they were paid out last week, but they hadn't been paid out as of the 31st of March, which is the date of this report. So that's the lion's share of that. And then there's actually a fairly sizable sum also that we're under budget on EA and support staff because we've had a lot of open positions this year. It's part of the labour market shortage. We've actually found it really hard to fill a lot of those positions. So we've had positions open all year, and you can see sort of on the flip side that our substitutes are pretty close to budget because when people are not there, we've been able to, for the most part, fill it. It's positions that, full year positions that we've had the most trouble filling. I do know that's a focus of our HR team, and the finance team is really starting to dig in on the numbers as well, just to see if we can get some way of gauging it a little bit better in the future. So that's really about it. I mean, service and supplies are a little bit under budget. We've had a few areas there, transportation and maintenance that have been a little over this year. It looks like, if you look down to the bottom, I can see you scrolling there, looks like we're sitting on a 2.8 million, so that's that bottom number in the middle there, yep. Ending accumulated surplus, but of course most of that is the retro that we're going to be, or that we have now paid out to the QP members. So we're expecting to come just a little higher than budget, better than budget for next year at this point. So we're tracking quite well. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions about the quarterly financial report? All right, seeing none, we will move on to 3.4, BCSTA report. Trustee Reid.
Yeah. So we did recently attend the BCSTA AGM. So just a reminder that there is a disposition of motions available on the BCSTA Hub if you'd like to review what was passed and defeated, and amendments and all of the like are available there. There is not so much to report at the moment, but in the newsletter that is being distributed, I wanted to call out that the Canadian Institute for Health Information has been asking Canadians to share their experiences accessing mental health and substance use services, considering some of the challenges in our district. I think it's important to call that out specifically. So by May 21st, there is an online survey open, and it's available to anyone age 13 and older. So that might be something that's good to share across social media within peer groups and professional groups as well. So that's in your email. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Trustee Reid. Okay, 3.5 is trustee written reports. Those of us who remember to do them, unlike myself, are in the package, so we can all read those. And now we're moving on to item number 4, which is public participation. This is comments or questions concerning the agenda. And I'll just remind everybody that basically you have 2 minutes to speak. If you come up, it's 15 minutes in total. Speak to agenda items and don't call out any individuals by name. Basically, those are the rules. That's the summary of the rules for public participation. So anyone who wishes to come to the podium, feel free to do so now. All right, so seeing nobody, you will have another chance, of course, at the end of the meeting to ask questions about the next things that come up on the agenda. So, if you are like, oh no, I missed my chance, don't worry, you'll have another chance later. Okay, so now we're moving on to action items. 5.1 is the 2023-2024 preliminary budget first reading. Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you. Trustees, I'm bringing to you tonight, and it's in the packet, the budget for the first reading. What I'm going to do right now is go through a quick presentation that shows some of the differences from the last budget, the preliminary that we brought to you in April, and we'll do a little bit more deeper dive, still quick, promise, it's only 3 slides, on capital because I know that we left that one, we didn't put a whole lot of detail in it before. So the first thing we're going to look at is the section of the budget that requires your authorization. Yep, that's right, that's the one. So essentially what you see here is, and I could almost do a show of hands here, how many people are accountants, and I think we're both sitting here. But in the accounting world, typically a budget is what you spend, right? It's the spending that goes out the door. It's your groceries, if you will, your household groceries. And that's what you see here. This is the school district's groceries for next year. When we get to capital, you'll see that what I have tried to present is that we also buy houses with our capital. That's not up here. So it's just an important distinction. Does that? I see Trustee Swanky looking around there. Does that make sense? You got it, right? So the first part of the presentation, we're going to focus on the household groceries, if you will, our operating fund. Yep. Thank you. So this is the highest level overview of our operating budget. As I said, I think we'll finish this year pretty strong, and at the moment we're estimating about 4.8 million will be our accumulated surplus, which is stronger than we budgeted last year, and also stronger than we brought to you in February. We do believe, and you'll see it over the next couple pages, that we will have a net. Oh, we didn't get in parenthesis there. We'll have a net deficit next year of 1.3, and I'll show you the details on that in a minute, which brings our budgeted accumulated surplus in 2024 to 3.5 million. So just for a little bit of comparison sake, last year the budget that was brought to you was accumulated surplus at the end of 23 of 3 million. So we'll be finishing next year stronger than we projected for this year. And the contingency reserve last year was projected to be 1.87. So again, slightly, we're projecting slightly better. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. I mean, it is a operating structural deficit, and obviously, something that we need to factor into our planning. And we've got some other thoughts. We're starting to obviously dig a lot deeper into the budget and some of the other funding sources that we can be looking at. So the detail, so hold on to that $1.3 million deficit, and you'll see it on the next slide. On the extreme bottom right-hand side, you'll see 1.3. So the numbers that I've highlighted in blue are the numbers that have changed since last time, and I'm not going to go through line by line. We did that in the budget committee. But what I am going to say is on the left-hand side, you'll see 2 million is highlighted. That 2 million is the additional revenue that we're getting from the province for the COLA. It only reflects COLA for all the bargaining groups at this point. The province has, so exempt employee increases weren't included, but the province hasn't said no, they've just said the jury's out and we haven't decided yet. And in fact, in all fairness to the province, they haven't decided for themselves either. So exempt staff who work in the ministries, they don't know whether they're going to have an increase passed through next year either. So that's just hanging out there. I will say on the expenditure side, I did include the same salary increase for every employee in the district. We know that for the bargaining groups that will happen. We don't know what will happen for the exempt staff at this point. So that's something that will fall out sometime in the fall, I think. The expenses that have increased, of course, if we've had increases in bargaining unit salaries, then of course all those numbers went up. Just as a little bit of a mental exercise, I put all the revenue that we get, where all the increases were against all the expenditures. It's actually that parenthesis, that bracket on the right-hand side where it says 700, and we've got a $700,000. Like the province just isn't funding enough. But that makes sense because they're not funding exempt. And also the province is not funding, it's on the right-hand side there, Rohan, up the top. Yep. The province is also not funding any more than about 10, whatever it is, percent of an increase, and our benefits, for the most part, increased closer to 20%. So there's another mismatch. Yeah, so you can see the 1.3 is the net surplus deficit, but I just want to point out one thing. That is the net of the net revenue expense of 2.7 and some transfers. And you'll see that a little bit clearer on the next slide. So the 2.7 is in the middle of the page there. Yep, that's it. And then we've got transfers, partly from our Indigenous programs and our schools. So the costs in the budget were slightly higher, and of course those programs are paying for those higher costs for those areas. And then we make a transfer to capital, so it's a 1.4 sort of collection back into the budget to give us 3.5, which we talked about earlier. So now what I'm going to do is move to, or maybe I should pause before I go to capital in case trustees have questions on that.
Can I just clarify, so our total accumulated surplus, is that in our reserve account? Okay, so we have a fairly large reserve account, but next year we're dipping into it by 1.3 million essentially. So if we keep having that, then it's only like 3 years worth of reserves, and then we have done. Okay.
Yeah.
Trustees, are there any other questions at this point in the presentation? Okay. Oh.
So I noted from the presentation at the budget committee, I'm just going to go digging a little bit. There was a line item that said staffing changes 1.4. And so perhaps we could have that described to us what the staffing changes looks like.
Yep, so it's about 4 numbers up. Yeah, there you go. Do you see it there, 1.4, everyone? I do actually have an explanation of that one here. You didn't prepare me, but I mean, it's one of these, you know, I sort of have it sticks out like a sore thumb number, so I always make sure I have a bit of background with me. So essentially what it is, all right, there's a little bit of money there. So these are additions, right? These are programmatic additions, but it's mostly for service level. School support, there was a little bit of a position there. District support, we added what we call a BCBA, board certified behavior analyst. Yeah. And I think that happened this year, but it's part of the, you know, we need to clean it up next year because they're there for a full year. So we had to add that in for the full year. Custodians for new schools and portables, about 2.5 of those. Bus drivers, 3, because we're getting 3 new buses and replacing 2. Grounds, we had 1 addition, and technology, we had 1 addition as well. That's the lion's share of sort of the support. We did add $400,000 in teaching costs. That's partly for some release time so that we can do our early learning collaborative so that teachers can be released from the classroom while we do that, while we do training. As well, again, this is that sort of budget cleanup of restoring some psychologists, is that right? And speech language pathologists. So they were hard to fill positions this year, but so we yielded some budget savings, but I want to make sure, of course, that we put them back in budget. So either we hire them if we can, or we have the funds to hire consultants or some other. That's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good information for everybody.
All right. Looks like you can carry on with the next part.
All right. I see what happened earlier. Okay, so let's move to capital. Mm-hmm. Next one. Oh, staffing. I didn't even write notes on that one. Trustee Swanky, when we looked at the preliminary budget presentation, I had this as a percentage chart, and part of that was because I wasn't quite sure where the numbers would fall out. This is now with FTE, so you can actually see. Cool. Yeah, our budget is people. And I just think it's important that the number of people, and it's a large district. There's a lot going on here. 800 teachers, almost, half as many again. 400 education assistants. It's good context. All right. So here's the fun stuff. Capital. Oh, sorry. There's a question.
Moss has a question.
Sorry, I just want to ask one more question before we move on, just for information's sake. Exactly how much do we receive per student?
Yeah, it's about 8,500. The increase that I showed you, that 2 million for the COLA, that hasn't been built into the student formula yet. So it's probably more than 8,500 right now, but they won't build it in until the following year. It's just a peculiarity of the way they run the system.
Thank you. I have just one question. If we're looking at this chart, does it include district admin? And does it include student services? And which ones are those two things in?
Okay, so district admin in two places, so principal, vice principal, right? Because some of those folks are actually in student services, and of course the majority are in the schools. And your exempt would include most of the other admin. Okay. And then you asked about student services, and I think you probably mean some teachers?
Yeah, I guess so. So like the people who are like the curriculum helping teachers and stuff, they would be in just teachers. Okay, yes. And then so yourself would be in the exempt staff category. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So now for the really fun stuff. You get to hear from an accountant and a non-accountant on this one. I think I'm getting an assist from Al because he can provide the color. Because remember, the thing with numbers is they're always a representation of something else that's happening. And to the extent that you can understand the something else that's happening, the numbers have meaning. If they're just numbers on a page, then they don't really have meaning. So, I struggled with the capital because I was like, there's so much more going on in capital than we are able to say in the budget. So I'm going to try and put the pieces together a little bit, and you might tell me to go away and never come back with this again, but it's worth a try for tonight. But what I wanted to say, and you can see it right there at the top left-hand side there, is this district, and we value our assets at the price that we purchase them. So if we purchased, I don't know what our oldest school is, but Watson School back in 1900, then it's valued at whatever the value was in 1900, right? But at those historic values, that's what we call it, we have 300 million of assets in the district at this point in time. So it's a lot, right? Even with the historic value. Of course, we're putting new buildings up and they're costing, $60+ million. A lot of that was purchased by the province. So that's why you see the deferred capital. That's kind of that recognition. I'm not trying to be completely precise here. Those numbers don't add, they get close. We'll just leave it at that, right? But that's kind of the picture. So that's your main assets account there, the 294 less the 229. We float some local capital in there on a regular basis because the province doesn't fund everything we need to do in capital. You'll see that a little bit again down below. And then, of course, last year we had to float even more local capital in there for the cost sharing that we did for the builds last year. So you can see that this year what we're doing is I should have deleted something there. But it actually says net of AFG, so that's annual facilities grant that we get from the province. And amortization, which is just us writing down our assets because, computers are worth less next year than they're worth right now, and cars ditto. So you write down the value of some assets. A and we end up losing value of about $1,270 this year, but we're purchasing about $570,000 worth of assets, and of course the cost sharing. So we're increasing by $5.5 million. So we'll end the year with about $68 million, net overall. So then for next year, what I'm anticipating is something kind of similar. It was kind of funny when I put it all together, but our AFG and amortization will end up being about $1.3 million again. And then we are moving $300,000, and you just saw that about 2 slides ago, from operations into capital so that we can pay for buses. I'm going to give you a little bit more insight on that one in the next slide. So this is the accountant's view and balance sheet. It's like now you're talking like accountants, and I can see David's hand.
Trustee Swanky. Press your button, please, Trustee Swanky.
Thank you. We're in a formal meeting. Just that very bottom of the slide, then, am I correct? That should read June 30th, 2024?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
No, just clarifying. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're hired. All right, so if we go to the next slide, this gives you a little bit more insight. So you can sort of see local capital, I'm bringing in the 300, and then I'm adding it to my tangible capital, right? That's our buses. The province is actually paying for 1.2 million of our buses. Remember we said they were a little shy? So now you get to see the whole picture. And on the right-hand column there, I'm showing all the Ministry of Education funding and all the work that is going on in capital this coming year. And I think, should I run through it, or do you want to take it from here?
I can take it from here, sure, yeah, if you want. So, just thinking about the minor capital and the pieces that are in there. So in our minor capital, we have several pieces. The school enhancement plan, which is all the different components that I talk about are very specifically funded. So annual facility grant is one of those funding that comes in, and the dollars are set, and then it's made for major repairs. So if we would not be able to go and buy laptops or a vehicle or anything with that with that money, it has to be, we use it for roofing, we use it for flooring, windows, all those types, wiring, electrical, plumbing, those types of repairs. Into the minor capital, we have the school enhancement plan, which also supports the building envelope projects. It supports flooring, and it will support roofing as well. And as we move from there into carbon neutral, so we have our carbon neutral plan, carbon neutral capital plan, and it is specifically around reducing greenhouse gases. And also we have, I'm just looking at my list as we're going through these because there's several. We also have the BEP, which I mentioned earlier, Building Improvement Plan, and the BEP is something that is more directed through the ministry. So years ago, probably about 10 years ago, assessments were done on our buildings. It's been a process for the ministry going through that, and now you're seeing that work being done. We completed East Chilliwack. We're in the plans of doing Vetter Elementary and Unsworth currently. And also the playground equipment plan program is in there as well. So those make it up. And just foreshadowing the next, or one of the slides we have coming up, is all of those programs we have to apply for. Annual facilities grant is pretty much laid out. This is what it is, money we get. The balance of that funding is we have to apply for, and we have to put business cases together.
So one of the business cases was for Sardis Secondary, so you can see that we're getting 40 million. And what I should say is, and I got this wrong when we got the contract, or I didn't get it wrong, I just needed clarification. But about half of that is the cost of the contract itself. And then there's all these escalation factors and other additional things that go into the secondary expansion. So that is the maximum potential that the ministry would allocate to us, and probably about 8 to 10 of it we'd have to do some really serious dancing and justification to actually get. It's probably closer to 30 is the real budget. We have received approval to purchase a site in the next calendar year, starting the 1st of April 2023. And we are currently working with the Ministry in Development on East Chilliwack Elementary. So there's a lot of work going on the side, and as Al said, minor capital projects is something that we have to apply for, and that's what the next slide shows.
So I'll jump in again. So this is, so every year, I'm always curious to see where we're landing, how our work is what we're producing from the work that we're putting out. So each year, as we make these requisitions and ask for these dollars, after they're announced, I go back and each district is announced as public document, and I go back and I tally up to see where we are. So in the last 5 years, we've always been either, anywhere between 1 and 5. Generally, we're no lower than 5th place. And if you think about our district, we're generally the 12th largest district. So there's larger districts that have many more buildings, that have a lot of needs, and they also have a lot of staff that are able to sit down and do all these reports. This is a team of people that are actually running the district and doing this at work as well. So I have to celebrate the hard work that this team is doing, and it's it carries right through to all of our staff. So yeah, I just wanted to really point that out. Through the minor capital, it is a it is a competition, and all the districts try really hard to put together really good documents and show the value. That's why we need these dollars, and yeah, the team here has been very successful, staying as one of in the top 5 for receiving funds. So that's been great work.
And needless to say, after we've got the money, there's a lot of hard work that comes to implementing the program. So we've got a really active, busy team that works hard to get the money and then works hard when they get the money. So that's the capital. I wouldn't mind if we could just go back one slide, just so we can sort of sit for a second on that number. So you never get to see this in the bylaw. So that one, yeah. That right-hand column, there's a lot of money and a lot of work in the district flowing through there. That's what I wanted. That was sort of the punchline to pull out. There's just one more slide I wanted to share, and that was on special purpose, because that's, oops, that's not the one. That shouldn't have gone in. Yeah. And there's one thing I want to say to this, and then Mark, if you wanted to add a few comments. You'll notice that there's some funding there next year for what's called school food programs. It was called family affordability this year. Next year the program is coming back solely with a focus on food, and again focused on families who are in need. We are currently working internally to pull together hopefully a staff member to lead this work, and that way we can identify which students need the program, how to get it to them, and what it is. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up that that's work that's started. Mark?
Great. And so this doesn't give a lot of detail on what some of these programs are, but most of you are familiar with them, with Community Link, Early Learning. RAFG is in there. That's just for some of the really minor things. AFG is sort of split between small projects and big projects. It's the way the ministry does it. So they run $500,000 through the special purpose fund. The big one, of course, is the Restored Language, the Classroom Enhancement Fund. The one I want to point out, though, is the Early Learning. Though you don't see much of a difference between this year and next year, we are ramping that up with the directive that the ministry is giving us to incorporate more childcare programs in our district. And we have our district principal of early learning, Nicole Driscoll, who's very competent and very proactive in going after optional ministry grants. These aren't have to have at districts. Some districts are, right now they're ignoring them, so, which is unfortunate. But Nicole's really looking at opportunities that she can bring into our district, and one is the before and after school care. And I believe she's trying to get licensing for 3 more sites this next year, with an eye on trying to get before and after school care at every elementary school in a few years. So we look forward to seeing that. So that number will gyrate. What you see here right now, what we present in our budget, is what's been announced from the ministry. So may not necessarily be what happens. In fact, it won't be what happens this next year. It's just where we are in a point in time right now. So that's it. Thank you.
I see on this chart that there's, this year there was $51,000 for mental health initiatives, and that next year that's not in the budget. Is there, could you speak to that?
Yeah, that's exactly to the point where we can only publish what's been announced. So don't ask me why the timing of the ministry announcement, and that's always a fun game we have. And fortunately, we have a good relationship with the ministry. If we are perplexed, we can shoot an email out to a few of our contacts there, and they get back to us pretty quick. So we're good.
Trustee Fontar?
Thank you. I just had a quick question about the decrease in funding for French language. Are we expecting a decrease in enrollment in French for next year? I might have missed that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there was a small enhancement given this year again. So that next year's number goes back to a base funding that they've been providing. Again, hopefully they'll prop that up. So that's why I say it's kind of a funny slide to show right now because it's such a transient interim funding, but it is what it is where we're at this moment in time.
Sorry, are we finished the presentation? I'm sorry, I didn't realize because we were still in the middle of slides. Trustees, do we have questions about the budget? Trustee Swanky?
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions. First, can we go back to the previous slide? There. Just clarity on this slide then. Is that the 2022-23 amended budget figures being compared to the proposed 23-24 proposed budget figures?
Yes, that should be right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. The more fulsome question that I did want to put through the chair to staff. It was mentioned that capital investments are not included in this budget, but I'm correct that they are captured in the capital bylaw that was approved by the board at the last board meeting. So they are approved by bylaw. They're not captured in our operational budget. Is that correct, my understanding?
Yeah, I mean, they're approved through a separate process. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just had one question. So as you know, I've asked for to really understand where all of the discretionary spending is happening, and I think you did a great job of that actually at the budget presentation. Not this, but at the budget presentation that we had last meeting. But then when it comes back to the actual budget, then I get confused again. So I just this year, I think it looks like we're a pretty tight budget. But we are balanced, so whatever. But I can see that there is a structural deficit going on. That means that at some point we're going to have to look at probably making some sort of cuts. And I would like the board to be very well informed if that's happening, that we understand what is being cut and what choices are being made. Because I currently am still a little foggy on how many of our administrators are ones we have to have? How many of the ones that we chose to have? How many support things in the district office are have to have versus chose to have? All throughout the district, there's a little bit of that I just am not I've never been completely 100% clear on. And so it just, once we get to the point where we maybe do have to make some hard decisions, I want to make sure that that's presented to the board in a way that we can understand, because I would hate to just pass a budget and then go, wait, I wouldn't have made that decision. I want to at least understand how it's made. So that's just sort of more going forward than I think this particular budget, but for sure for next year, I'm concerned looking at the numbers unless some magic money falls from the sky. So, okay. Do you have any other questions, Trustee? Okay, seeing none, then I believe we need to have a motion. Okay, would someone like to make the motion?
Yes.
Trustee Bondar?
Sure, I will move that the Board of Education approve the first reading of the 2023-2024 annual budget bylaw at the May 9th, 2023 regular board meeting in the amount of $213,172,760.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Westerby. Trustee Bondar, would you like to speak to your motion at all?
No, good, thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Oh, Trustee Moss?
Well, I would just like to thank our Secretary Treasurer for a really nice, concise presentation and description of our spending and where we're at with the whole big picture to all of us non-accountant, simple lay people. It's very much appreciated. So, but thank you.
Yes, I agree with Trustee Moss. It was actually very interesting having a different Secretary Treasurer submit the budget, because it was like I got different insight into different aspects, having just a different voice doing it. So that was really interesting, I think, for the whole board, those of us especially who've been here through the last term as well. I just, what was I going to say? Oh, I had another point to make. Oh, shoot. Oh, I know what it is. It's for the benefit of trustees, just so you know, those of you who haven't been on the board before, the budget requires 3 readings, so we are just doing first reading today. We tend to do it over 2 days in case you go home and you're like, oh, I have a burning question or whatever. That allows you to have another chance to speak into it. And but typically we usually do the second and third reading in one meeting. But we don't have to. We could have another meeting in June, but that's typically what we do. So just for your knowledge, this isn't, the budget won't be passed tonight, just the first reading of it will. All right. Seeing no further, oh, Trustee Sankey.
If I may, thank you, Chair. I'll speak in favor of the budget. I do greatly appreciate the previous comments about the tension that exists between, what is proposed to be approved here and dipping into our operational surpluses. On the other hand, this is what was described as a service level budget by the Secretary Treasurer, and it does align with, as was presented in the last meeting, strategic priorities of the board. And I think there was a very nice job done of bringing those points together to demonstrate that our budgetary priorities do align with the strategic priorities outlined by the Board of Education. I don't think I have anything further. My appreciation to staff for the work.
Okay, trustees, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the first reading of the 2023-2024 annual budget? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, trustees. Okay, moving on to 5.2, schedule of board meetings. Sorry, we've had a request for a brief recess. Yes. Let's do 5 minutes. So let's get back here at approximately 7:05, 7:06 it looks like. All right, everybody, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. Thank you for the reminder that we're all human and need a break once in a while. Item 5.2, schedule of board meetings.
Thank you, Chair. So what you have in front of you is the schedule of board meetings for the 2023-2024 school year. And so the suggestion is 10 board meetings and 12 learning sessions. Included is a colorful calendar that maps out all the dates for next year. So this is the very first one, the PDF copy, so 10 meetings, similar to last year. 12 learning sessions, mainly because of the fact that we've got a learning session in the month of October, month of November, because we had the board elections last year. But what's super important is the colorful calendar, which is mapped out for the members of the Board of Education, has board meetings, learning sessions aligned with topics from all of our leaders' meetings that we present throughout the school year, which is connected to the board strategic plan, partner meeting dates, student engagement, project dates. This calendar becomes an important artifact in aligning all of the district structures with the vision of learning to support the goals in the board strategic plan. So if you want to highlight that piece, I'll just go right back to the number of board meetings.
Okay, are there any questions, trustees, before someone makes the motion? Trustee Moss?
Well, so I appreciate this nicely laid out, very pretty colors calendar. But I'm wondering, I see that we have 10 board meetings and 12 learning sessions. And I'm just wondering if there isn't more opportunity to convert some of these learning sessions into board meetings. You know, a lot of these learning sessions would be beneficial, like the last one we had, for a board meeting. I'm just a little concerned we're spending more time behind closed doors per se. I mean, they're open, but I'm just a little concerned that we've got more of those than we do scheduled board meetings. So maybe you could entertain that question, thought, for discussion purposes.
Superintendent?
Thank you, Trustee Marsh. So, great question. First of all, the board learning sessions are public. We post all of the presentations on the public website. The purpose of the board learning sessions is to provide context to the Board of Education so they can be better informed at the public meetings. 10 board meetings is sufficient to do all the board's work that we've outlined in the board's calendar. If you do require additional board meetings, that'll become a board motion. So there's a possibility for this particular school year, we may require one additional board meeting to finish the policy manual analysis project. And that's sort of the workflow that has gone on. And again, there may be topics from a learning session that could be beneficial at a public board meeting. Hope that answers the question.
Trustee Prose?
That speaking in favor of the strategic learning sessions,
Oh, sorry, Trustee Prose, this is just for questions right now. We don't have a motion on the floor. I will come to you as soon as the motion has been made, or if you want to make the motion, this would be the time.
no, okay, maybe what I'll say is, I'll wait for the motion.
Would someone like to make the motion?
I just have one question. Just further to Trustee Maz's question about learning sessions, I do notice that there's 2 in January and 2 in April. I just wondering if you could speak to why that was scheduled that way.
Thank you. And I know in the month of January, we got a budget presentation. I think that's intentional. And I forget the rationale for the April. Same thing, budget. Yeah. So again, for 2 budget presentations. Thank you.
Just muscling.
Trustee Bonder?
Was going to make a motion, yeah. I will move that the Board of Education approve the following calendar option for the 2023-2024 school year, Board of Education meetings and learning sessions.
Great, would you like to speak to, seconder, Trustee Westerby, would you like to speak to your motion, Trustee Bonder?
I approve the calendar and the sessions. I feel like it's well laid out. I'm happy with the result. Thank you.
Trustee Prose, you had a comment.
Yeah. So on the strategic learning sessions, what I do like about them is that they're zoomed. Is that going to continue? Because it gives me a little bit of freedom from a schedule.
That is correct. They'll continue on Zoom.
Superintendent, just to clarify, every once in a while, if there was a specific reason it had to be in person, I suppose, but generally it would be on Zoom, correct?
That is correct.
Any other comments, or anyone want to speak in favor or opposed to this motion? Oh, Trustee Moss.
Well, I actually have another question, and that is, so we have been embarked on this project of rewriting the policy book, and I'm just wondering, since so many of these policies are on our agendas right now, I'm just wondering if once we're finished with those, we'll be able to incorporate more of the subject matter of these learning sessions into the board meetings. And I also want to say that I appreciate the attention to the budget in these learning sessions, sort of as a committee of the whole per se / learning session. Whereas the board is able to speak to the budget, not just learn about the budget, because that's our job. So my first question is, that I stated was, once we're done with the policy book, are we able to sort of swing some of this stuff into board meetings? Sorry, it's a little redundant, but whatever.
Superintendent?
Thank you. We can swing any topic into a public board meeting if it has interest to the public itself. Just want to clarify, even though we hope to finish the policy booklet by the end of the school year, I think it's super important that the Board of Education engages in a continuous review of the policy booklet once again to keep the policies fresh. So assumption would be for next year, probably we are down to, I think, 85 policies from 145. We should be able to go to 20 per year to ensure that the policies are up to date. Hope that answers the question.
All right, not seeing any further speakers. Oh, sorry, Trustee Zanke.
Thank you. Just a clarifying question. I'm looking at Board Bylaw 5. It mentions December 5th is elections. I just wanted to clarify, our bylaw state said it's a special annual meeting. Would be the intention on the 5th be to hold 2 consecutive meetings of the board, one to be the special election proceedings and the other to be the business meeting of the board?
That is correct.
Okay, I think I didn't jump the gun this time. I think I can say there's no further speakers. So, all those in favor that the Board of Education approve the 2023-2024 school year Board of Education meetings and learning sessions as presented? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay. On to 5.3 Chilliwack Youth Health Center rent relief extension. And this is actually, I think it's easiest if I just present this motion because the request came to me. So I'm going to move that the Board of Education extend the end of date of the rent relief provided to the Chilliwack Youth Health Center to December 31st, 2023, which from previously June 30th, 2023. If someone seconds it, then I'll speak to the motion. Trustee Westerby, thank you. Okay, so the request came into the Board of Education to extend the rent relief to the end of the year. Now, we put it on the agenda because we have to have it on the agenda for the board to debate it. So it's on there as the affirmative. It's not meant to necessarily be my recommendation to the board. It's more to start the discussion on whether we should do this. So the Chilliwack Youth Health Center does provide a number of services to youth in our city, some of which I think we can all probably agree directly benefit our school district. So they provide mental health support and medical services on a free and drop-in basis to youth. They have had a change in the way they're funded, so they have been struggling a little bit to provide those services. They have applied to be a foundry. Their letter said that they are hoping that that will happen sometime soonish, so they are asking for a bit of an extension. Now, I can see sort of two two sides to this. So when it came forward, I'm presenting it to the board, and I'm hoping that we all have a good discussion about this tonight. So on the positive side, I think that this is a definite service to the district. We're probably getting more bang for our buck than the $10,000 rent relief. On the other hand, we have a lot of other community groups that rent our facilities that are not getting rent relief, and it could be seen that possibly that is unfair, that we didn't have a process to like apply for rent relief, or that we're maybe putting one like preferential treatment for one organization. So I'm just putting it out there, that's what's on the table, and I look to trustees to provide feedback, and then we can vote on whether we're going to extend rent relief to the Chilliwack Youth Health Center. Trustee Reed.
Yes, thank you. So I've worked with the Chilliwack Youth Health Center as a partner through CHC, through different programs in the community. I'm sure we're all aware that they're a completely invaluable service to the community. I've also been part of the conversations happening to bring the Foundry. I'm not a major player, but I've been in the room when we've been discussing it. I know that it is very much in progress. They are very much looking for a way to make this a sustainable thing. They're not asking for this forever. This isn't going to become their new model. Mental health is an absolute and utter crisis in this community. It's an extension, so it's something that we've already done, and I think it's reasonable to extend it to the end of the calendar year, just considering what we're seeing in our youth, and I wholeheartedly support this motion.
Trustee Bondar.
Thank you. I will concur with some of Trustee Reed's points, especially in terms of the enormous, massive mental health hole that we have in our district, and the CYHC is doing everything they can to try to fill it. I also see the CYHC as they were a new model that sort of founded this very, very important set of services, followed very quickly by an announcement of this Foundry model from the province, which for them is very unfortunate timing, in my opinion. And I do therefore see a reason for us to support it. I guess what I was wondering was what has been their process up to now, and I feel like some of the things Trustee Reed just said spoke to that. And I will be also supporting this motion for those reasons. Thanks.
Trustee Westerby.
Yes, I would like to speak in favor of this motion and encourage trustees to vote in favor of it. As Margaret said, as Trustee Reed said, I have been connected with the CYHC personally as well through the work that they do with the Gender Support Network and supporting trans youth, as well as the mental health of all Chilliwack students. What's imperative is that they actually are within the Neighborhood Learning Center inside CSS, that direct connection with the schools, in that what they're asking for is the space in the school, in the NLC, and that's why we have to approve it today. I think that piece, that connection to the school, is really imperative to the students' mental health. I don't think they would be asking for this if it wasn't in benefit for the students. And I do believe that they are working very hard to make this the last time they have to request this from us. So I would like to pose a question just to mitigate any potential questions to staff or superintendent. If you could speak to the potential risks of releasing this and not asking for rent, and potentially what rent revenue we might be missing out on, so we know what the real balance is here that we're looking at. Thank you.
Superintendent.
I guess the only risk maybe is trying to have some consistent practice across the district, because we have other members of the community renting also space from us, and we have been consistent in our approach. So that's the long-term risk in not being consistent.
Trustee Prosek.
So they're asking for half a year rent, like they're asking not for, so they're asking from June to December. So that is not a full year, then it's just a part of a thing. So what I would suggest though, if we would pass this, is I do echo the concerns by Rowan of once you start something like this, it's very difficult to pull it back. So because of what you guys said about the CYHC as being imperative at this point, I think what we could recommend, if we give them rent relief, if we could require that they provide us with an update of their finances or of their costs, or what are they actually doing? Maybe a little bit of their procedures, so that if they are in need of rent relief because of bad management, I'm not saying they are. I do not want that to be stated that they're doing bad management. But it'd be nice to know as a board what their actual costs are and what their funding is, and so that we can come alongside of them, so that this is not something that keeps extending itself towards us. Thank you.
Superintendent, can you speak to if we did do pass this motion, would we have to do a separate motion to ask you to ask them that, or would you be able to, like, as part of the handing over or like telling them they don't have to pay rent, would you be able to say, give them a heads up that if they were to ever ask again, we might be asking more questions about their finances? Like, I'm sorry to put that delicately. I don't know. I'm just like, can you just speak to Trustee Procé's question?
At the end of the day, the board will have to make a motion in requesting further information regarding any of the data sets that we have or they can provide us with, that we can bring back to the Board of Education.
So are they a nonprofit organization, or are they just working in the school as volunteers?
It is nonprofit. They're actually renting space from NLC, and that's been the operation so far. And at this stage, what they're looking for is rent relief until the end of this calendar year.
Trustee Moss?
Thank you. So I'm going to come at this from a tough love perspective. The school district is actually also a nonprofit organization. And I think that, we've been very generous. They've had almost a full year of not paying any rent at all. So they've had a full year. I understand that the timing with the grant, but there's, I think we gave them a good year of grace. My concern here is that we set a precedent. And it's, you did it for them, well, how about for us? We do good things too. And I think that is, I think we were very generous in giving them a free year's rent. And so I have grave concerns about going down this road, because at what point do we say no? At what point do we stop? And I mean, we just had a budget presentation, and money doesn't grow on trees, and we are scraping for every penny that we have, putting towards the kids in our classrooms in our schools. So I am not in favor of extending this any further than the end of June. So.
Trustee Swanky?
Thank you, Chair. Before speaking to the motion, I'm hoping you'll entertain a question, or I'll ask that you rule if it's germane to our considerations. I'm wondering if the consideration of return to this process is demonstrating a potential gap in either our policy or our administrative procedures on these matters. I'm wondering if you rule it's germane, if you could put that through to staff.
I'd be happy to put it through to staff, yeah. Do you think that we have a gap in our policies in regard to this type of request?
Just off the cuff, we have admin procedures around renting our spaces in our school district, and that by itself drives the conversation. It's consistent.
I guess. Sorry, can I clarify your question? So are you asking if we have anything regarding rent relief or waiving of fees in our policy?
So if I may, I mean, the question arises from policy states that facilities may be rented on a cost recovery basis. In this instance, we are renting the NLC through a cost recovery basis. I'm wondering, this is a request that has twice come to the board, and I'm wondering if it's demonstrating a potential gap where it may be able to be dealt with on a more appropriate basis that looks at the considerations of our financial situation, our strategic objectives, and the partnership with the organization seeking support from the district through rent relief.
Secretary Treasurer.
I take your point. I actually understand where you're coming from, and I think it's worth a closer look. In some respects, it's to use Trustee Ma's expression, although I'm sure it's from somewhere else, but it's the running of the trains that we're looking at here, and for micro decisions like this to keep coming to a board, it's a fair question to be asking. So I think with further discussion, maybe we can look a little deeper into it.
Trustee Bonder.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point. I feel like this particular center fell into some unique circumstances that preclude this request. And I think that kind of gets at some of Trustee Ma's concerns. I don't suppose that additional requests for funding are ever pre-planned, but I do think that it will be possible for the CYHC to obtain their own funding based on that unique positioning they were trying to attain this year, if that makes sense.
Trustee Reed.
Yeah, just to add on to my previous point and kind of to address some of the concerns about sort of the slippery slope, and if we do one, we must do another. Point very well taken. I think it is something we do need to look at kind of moving forward from a procedural standpoint. The point that I would like to make is that we currently have a huge lack in the services we are able to provide students. So anecdotally, I have one child that has been, I frankly and earnestly asked the school for assistance, and I have been told by staff before that CYHC is an amazing resource, and I wasn't officially referred there, but I was referred there. They are difficult positions to fill, as it was pointed out previously. We are having that recruitment issue, and I feel like it's a disservice to students when we do have the opportunity just to extend a little bit more grace. We have been very patient and very graceful with that decision, but on behalf of them, while we continue to look for solutions for things that we usually provide through the school system.
Trustee Wester.
Thanks. So just wanting to follow up with the question I asked previously, which pertains to the issue of providing rent going forward. I kind of saw the Secretary Treasurer flash some fingers so about the rental loss that we would otherwise be receiving from this, and then to compare it to the value add of them being in NLC doing these services, as Trustee Reed pointed out. I would love to know if you have those numbers. I appreciate that it's kind of on the spot, so you probably don't. No, okay, that's fair. But I imagine that the balance is considerable in the favor of the students and not so much on our pocketbook. But again, that's totally speculation, so I couldn't say that for sure.
I believe we do have the figure on what the rent is. Could you speak to that? So that my memory, it was $10,000 for the whole year, so this would represent an additional $5,000. Is that correct? I believe it's $5,000 this represents, correct?
Is this big room that they rent?
I think
That's more than that.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It would be more than 5. The other piece, I'm just going to mention this piece. The NLC portion of CSS, it's not actually included in our AFG grant funding. Maybe Al can speak to this a little bit better than I can. But the general gist of it is that if we don't get rental dollars from that, then we're using operating dollars designed for the class. The ministry doesn't fund us for that space to maintain it. We're expected to maintain that with community partnerships, with the rental and lease agreements. And this was all set up in 2012 when that was opened. And so the fact that we're providing rent relief, maybe that's okay in a little interim, but long term that's not good. And we already provide that space for extremely low rent. So it's probably more in the tune of $15,000 a month, but for that space and that location, that is that's basically almost free for an organization in that kind of a scenario. So, Al, do you want to maybe speak to the AFG piece, because I think that's an important.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kirk. So when we're applying for annual facility grant, it is focused on our learning buildings. So it is focused on schools that have enrollment, and CSS does have enrollment. But when we have an NLC piece, Neighborhood Learning Center, that the ministry identifies as we're not putting students in there and a teacher and the typical bricks and mortar school. So they look at the square footage, the size of the building, and they basically subtract or do not fund that piece. So if long-term, if we're looking at roofing replacements, that's where we lean on our annual facility grant to do that. In this, if I were to submit that area, it would be denied, and then we would fund that through our operating. So I wouldn't submit it. I would plan on doing it through our operating.
So just to make sure I understand this, and for the benefit of all trustees, I suppose, so you're saying that the cost of providing this rent relief is actually higher because it is the NLC than if they were renting a gymnasium like in our school, that is already covered by our normal funding, but this is like a separate space that isn't. So like custodial and that kind of stuff is not covered for the NLC, is that correct? Is that what that's not what you just explained?
No.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Superintendent.
Just to clarify, last year's request was to the amount of $10,000. That was the motion that came by last year, and that was the letter that accompanied the request. Assumption is that they are making a similar request when it comes to the dollar figure. That's based on what you provided.
So once again, to clarify, so then I was right about the figure, the $10,000, but what Assistant Superintendent Savage is explaining is that then $10,000 is already vastly undervalued for the actual price we could get for the space. Okay. Assistant Superintendent Manuel?
Oh. Sorry, I think it's the word. I think I'm not absolutely clear on, so MCFD had an agreement with us to rent a large portion, which they then turned over to the Youth Health Center. And MCFD has withdrawn that support to the Youth Health Center for their reasons. And now they're coming to us. So that's where I think the complexity is being unsure of how much space we're actually being asked for. What the rent would be for that space is different than what we've had the arrangement directly with the Youth Health Center. So I think there's some complexity in here.
Trustee Moss.
Thank you. So they already were receiving low rent, so it was simply cost recovery. It's not like we were making a profit, right? That's correct. Okay. And so as landlords overseeing, this is money that goes into our operating budget, as we've just learned. It's like I said, this is tough love, right? I mean, it's not our job to assess their ability to obtain dollars or to assess what grants there are available to them or any of that. Our responsibility is to the school district and to generate income for that space. And it's actually costing us that money that is actually taken away from kids. And so I think, I voted in favor of this the last time, reluctantly, but for a year, we thought, well, you know what, let's give them a break. But really, I don't even think that this is our purview to say, you get free rent. I don't really think that that's even something that we should be entertaining, because this is strictly financial business for the school district. So I just ask everybody to really weigh this out before you make a decision on this. So.
Oh, trustee Swanky.
Thank you, Chair, and I do apologize. I still haven't spoken to the motion, but I do have another question I wanted to put through the chair, either to the chair or through the chair to staff. I know their initial correspondence indicated this was support for their operations. Is it clear that they are unable to operate if this isn't provided? Or like, are we the first request, or are we the last in a long line of requests that they've made?
From what I understand from the first request and from this one, basically there's a significant change to the way they were funded. They used to be, as Assistant Secretary Manuel, Assistant Superintendent Manuel, stated, they used to be funded through NCFD. That kind of fell apart. Then they did get another grant from the province, but it's just a little bit more tenuous. So their budget has a shortfall this year that they thought they were going to make up, and then they didn't quite, so they're asking for rent relief. That's my understanding from the 2 bits of correspondence. I don't have a ton more information than what's in the package, but that's my understanding. And then also from the letter that we received this year, they do seem to be anticipating being made a foundry, in which case all of their financial woes would be over and we would go back to collecting rent normally, or maybe they wouldn't be in our schools. I don't know, actually. If they become a foundry, maybe everything would change. But anyways, that's my understanding, that there was a significant change in the way they're funded, and then less revenue than they anticipated, and so they're looking for any ways to cut costs, I believe. Does that
I
conform?
don't have any other information.
Yeah. Trustee Swanky, you are the only one who's just asked questions and hasn't spoken to the motion. Would you like to, I should have asked you, because a few people have spoken twice to the motion, but.
No, and I do appreciate the opportunity to address the matter. I will speak in favor, though, frankly, I am struggling with the motion. We often note that we are wanting for mental health supports in the district and in our community. So I of course want to support their work. I also don't have any certainty that if their services weren't there, where that gap would be filled. Their work aligns with our human and social objectives of the strategic plan. So in my view, it does align with some of those priorities defined by the board. Where I'm challenged is kind of the lack of not lack of process, but the clarity in process and the capacity of the board in a vacuum to consider competing priorities and to consider, frankly, the opportunity cost of offering rent relief on the one hand to one organization while not considering requests or receiving requests even from other worthy organizations. So it points to why I did ask the question through the Chair 2 staff about what is the process in this. I will, again, speak in favor of it, but I'll be very disappointed if we find ourselves back at this table reviewing a similar request. And while I won't prejudge that until that happens, it will be a much more difficult position for myself as a member of this board, and I believe for this board to be considering that request at that time, should it happen.
Okay, not seeing anyone else speaking, I would just like to speak one more time to about this motion. So thank you for all of everyone's thoughtful comments. It actually helped clarify my thinking a lot. So thank you for really considering it. I think it's a bit of a tough motion because I don't think anyone at the table has any idea that this is an important service, so it makes it challenging. For me, I think when I look at how much it would cost us as a district to provide the services that are currently being provided by the Chilliwack Youth Health Center, it is so much more money than the amount of rent relief that they're asking for, that I think that I am inclined to support this motion tonight. I think if the Chilliwack Youth Health Center is wanting the district to somehow be more of a partner and wanting us to fund it on an ongoing basis, I think in order for me to support that going forward, I would need a much more partnership kind of agreement where they're providing data to us, where they're showing us their budget, where it's much more official. And I think I would be reluctant to do this sort of ad hoc, another 6 months of sort of rent relief without that happening. But I think I think that the support for our students, and being one of the only services that youth has for mental health on an emergency sort of drop-in basis, I would be reluctant to not provide the support that's being requested tonight. So that's my final statement. A couple people I didn't mean to have the last word, so if anybody else did need to say anything else who hasn't spoken twice, feel free, but other than that, we will put it to the vote. All right, seeing no one, all those in favor that the Board of Education extend the end date of the rent relief provided to the Child Youth Health Center to December 31st, 2023 from previously June 30th, 2023. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That motion carries. Okay, we're going on to policy renovation project, beginning with 5.4.1, policy 315 weapons, and this is a policy to affirm. There's a few repeals, just to be clear. We're doing a reaffirm one first. Superintendent, can you give us a little background before we put the motion on the table?
Thank you, Chair. So this is part of the policy analysis project. This is one of the last 5 policies that is being reviewed by the Education Policy Advisory Committee. 4 more policies will be brought forth. As Trustee Swanky talked about it in his report, members of EPAC looked at the existing policy, enhanced the existing policy by adding a definition as to what a weapon constitutes, and also identified exceptions to the policy that provides direction to our schools. I think the rest of the information is pretty explanatory. Thank you.
Can I get someone to make the motion? Trustee Swanky?
Thank you, Chair. I would move that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 315 weapons, previously 515 weapons, as presented.
Seconded by Trustee Bond. Trustee Swanky, would you like to speak to your motion?
Certainly, and only briefly. I'll note that the policy came to the Education Policy Advisory Committee once. There was some, I think, minor feedback, but overall it was positive, which I think is a reflection of the good work done by staff on this. I'll also note that it was referred to the board, recommended for consideration by unanimous support of the Assembly. So my appreciation again to EPAC for the work, and I hope trustees will consider the proposed policy.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Trustee Moss.
Well, I have a question. Bringing weapons to school is obviously frowned on. It's also depicted clearly in the School Act, and it's against the law. So I'm just wondering why this policy was not up for abandonment because of its very obvious redundancy.
Superintendent, can you speak to that?
Sure, I can. Yeah, it's a consideration, but I think at the end of the day, we have to, I think when you look at the policies the board really has to consider, this is one of those policies you want to be pretty strong on and be very clear and explicit. Sometimes common sense isn't common at all in our community.
Can I just clarify, you did mention at the beginning that the definition was added. Is it partly the definition that was deemed to be important in retaining the policy?
It is, and I think the existing policy was pretty archaic too, so adding the definition did enhance the policy clarity.
All right, not seeing any further hands up. All those in favor of reaffirming policy 315 weapons as presented? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, we're moving on to policy 517, health promoting schools, and this is a policy that's been recommended to be banned and repealed. Superintendent?
Thank you, Trustee Wiesel. So this is one of 4 policies to be repealed. Again, as we talked about the policy analysis, we've got a total of 145 policies in our booklet. And gone through the process, so we should be down to 86 policies, and there'll be 45 policies to be repealed. These are one of the 4 policies part of the repealing process. So the first one is health promoting schools has a value, but again, if you look at one of the key principles will be is that if there's anything that is part of the School Act, regulation, orders in council, ministry website, government of BC website, it's replicated it doesn't have to be repeated in a board policy. Probably there was a rationale prior to. And so realistically, if you go back and look, there's an extensive website on health promotion in school districts on the ministry policy site by itself. I just brought that context. One will be is keeping BC healthy and safe. From that, there's healthy communities. And then from that itself, it just talks about healthy schools, and all the things that have been part of the old policy are replicated in there with extensive resources and the ability for districts to be able to have these. And so if you did a scan across BC school district policies, most of the time they may have a small regulation, but there's no policies in place, mainly because information is available on a public website.
Trustee Moss?
So before this policy gets put on the table, I would like to move that we send this policy back to the Ed Policy Committee for a rewrite. And if somebody would like to second it, I will tell you why.
Trustee Westerby seconded that. Trustees, just to clarify so everyone understands what's happening, we don't have this policy on the table as presented in the package yet. Trustee Moss is moving instead to refer it to EPAC. And it's been seconded, so she will now explain why she wants to refer instead of repeal.
Thank you. So this is a very important philosophical statement. We just passed a policy that we don't want weapons in our schools. And I think that this policy needs to be alongside the weapons policy because the key words here are promoting healthy lifestyles. We could make statements in this policy for things that we believe we want to keep out of our schools by way of drinks that we know are not healthy for them. We have, I'm sure Michelle Obama would think that this was a great policy to have on our books. And the key statement here that I would like to see in this policy stated is that we would work cooperatively with the community and parents promoting healthy lifestyles. I think this is an important one to keep. So that's my rationale.
Trustee Reed?
Yeah, thank you for raising that, Trustee Moss. I would support the motion to refer. I would like to hear from partner groups and community members on this. I think EPAC always gives us great perspective, and they could kind of give us a consensus on that.
Trustee Bondar?
Yeah, I concur. Thanks to Trustee Moss for raising that aspect I had not considered.
Trustee Prosek?
Yeah, I would, I think that the point, though, the principle of these policies are that they're redundant. So I think that we have to keep in mind that we're not eliminating healthy food from schools or healthy thought from schools. We're just saying that we have it already in another policy, and this is just another, like basically what we're trying to do here, I think, if I understand it correctly, is we're trying to narrow our policy so they're actually simplified, as clear as possible. Even the weapon policy theoretically could go, but we've already, because of its severity and because of all the people, or whatever, it's just one of those things that's kind of top of mind, so we kind of keep it, but maybe next year we'll get rid of it. But my point is that like our concept that we're trying to do here is not whether we agree with healthy schools, it's that we're trying to bring our policies to kind of a nice, tight, workable framework, and then direct people to these other policies that are already there. I think that's kind of what our agenda is. That's how, so I would speak against that motion.
Anybody else on the motion to refer? Trustee Westerby.
Yeah, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that Trustee Moss is bringing to this motion to refer. When I was looking through the School Act pieces that were included in the background, I found that what was brought up was that it's really not that specific to Chilliwack and what Chilliwack values, and because we do have a lot of locally grown vegetables and things like that that maybe could be incorporated into a policy like this. So, as Trustee Reed said, partner groups may have really important pieces that they want to bring that local lens to this policy. So, I mean, I would be curious to see what EPAC does with it, and then at the end of the day, if we decide that it's best to repeal, then so be it. I think it's worth the exploration.
Sorry, Superintendent.
Thank you, Board Chair, and I do appreciate the comments. So we have to take things into consideration. A lot of these policies could become an admin procedure. At the end of the day, it's about giving direction to principals and vice principals. It doesn't have to be a policy. I do appreciate the fact that there are some great statements there. Those same statements emulated across multiple ministry websites. We could easily take that information, make that into an admin procedure. The intent of the policy manual analysis was to take 145 policies and make that into a reasonable sum. Typically, districts have policies of not more than 25 policies on average, if you scan the system. So I think we need to be very mindful of what we would like to do with policies and provide clarity to staff. So policies creates the what for the Board of Education, the how goes to the administration. So realistically, this could easily become an admin procedure. I'm happy to take it back to EPAC, but keeping in mind the mandate of the policy analysis work.
Trustee Swanky, I thought I saw your hand moving before the superintendent pressed his button.
Thank you. As chair of EPAC, I think I'll reserve comment and stick with my vote. Thank you.
I guess I would like to speak to the motion to refer. I think when I looked at actually, it was funny because I was reading my package and I was like, this policy is garbage. What is the point of it? And then I was like, oh, it's for repeal. Okay, I understand. It was so like not detailed. I was like, what is happening? I'm on EPAC. How did we write such a bad policy? Anyways, but anyways, at the same time, I think that the rationale was that it is duplicated in ministry stuff. To me, I sort of struggle with seeing this as something that would be a policy. I almost feel like it would be more something that would fall under our strategic plan, than as an actual policy. It feels to me like it's so vague and like, we want a healthy school. Of course we do, yes, and that should be baked into, I feel like, a different spot in our governance system than into policy. It just seems like having a policy about being healthy is a strange spot for it, and I think that's why the policy read strange to me when I was reading through it, the old version. So I would vote, I think I'm against referring it. I think it's sort of not where we need to be devoting our time on EPAC, although I really do appreciate Trustee Maz's intent, and I think that we should be promoting health in schools. So whether that's through an admin reg or, like I say, more under, there's parts of our strategic plan about mental health and wellness and all of that kind of stuff that maybe it could be more in there. So yeah, I would be against the motion to refer. Trustee, does anybody else wish to speak for a first time? Oh, I think everyone has spoken once, actually. Sorry, Margaret. Sorry, Trustee Reed, you can speak then.
I actually would just ask for a point of clarity. EPAC, if they took a look at this, they could decide that it is redundant and decide to repeal it. Like that could be their suggestion.
Yes, that's correct. If it gets referred to EPAC.
Was that already? This hasn't already gone through them?
No.
So partner groups haven't had a chance to weigh in on it? Okay.
Trustee Moss.
So just for clarity, this was originally written in 2008 and then it was revised in 2014. I do agree. It's not the most eloquently written policy, which is the point of the policy rewrite, the whole project. But I mean, if we are if we are wanting to work, to coin the phrase, cooperatively with our community and our family, we live in a farming community, for goodness sakes. And I think I think this policy can be written in such a way that it is unique for Chilliwack, and it does honor the farming community and the healthy lifestyles that we do want to promote as a board. And so I don't know, I would encourage us to send this back to EPAC and let them have a look at it. Thanks.
Okay, not seeing any further speakers. All those in favor of referring policy 350, no, sorry, not weapons, sorry, policy 517, health promoting schools, to EPAC for consideration. Opposed? So that motion carries, so it will be referred back to EPAC. Okay, moving on to 5.4.3, policy 520, adult student fees. This is also a motion to repeal a policy. Superintendent?
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, this is another policy to be considered. So when this was written, and this was written way back in 1996, first of all, 2015, the ministry's come up with a revised, it has a up-to-date website on adult funding that goes on. The first piece around is in Section 2 of the School Act that all citizens of BC are entitled to complete a secondary school graduation at no cost. That's already part of the School Act by itself. The second part is what's really interesting. The board may provide an educational program to an adult who has already completed high school graduation from Chilliwack or any other jurisdiction. When ministry funding is not provided, course fees may apply, and that is great because if you go back and look at the ministry policy on adult funding, it says that the boards of education that have adopted motions may offer specific tuition-free courses to adults who have graduated. Again, this is ministry policy that's on a website. I don't think it needs to be duplicated in a policy.
And just before we get the motion on the table, can I ask one question? We often talk about how the information is available on the website. Do we have a very clear link to the ministry website on our website?
We don't have a clear link. We can easily add a clear link.
I'm just feeling like, given the number of times in public meetings lately, we've said it's on the ministry website, we should have a big button on our website that says, so people can find it.
We could do that, and better yet, we could actually do a link to where it lands at policy places. Because once you go to the main ministry site, it's not as straightforward to find that, So we'll have the assistants look at that.
Homework! Sorry. Trustee Reed, are you wanting to make a motion or are you just wanting to ask a question?
Just a question based on that. It would be possible then to call out the things that we have removed, because not everybody follows every board meeting, and say, if you're looking for parent, previously policy, blah, 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 this one, whatever, link here, ministry website, even in the short term, so people can find those. That's a possibility.
Thank you. Yes, we can actually go through. The ministry has stopped changing the website links, and so which is a good news story. And we could probably, and I think I like that idea, we can probably come up with some of the main links that parents would benefit from off our district site, and then continue to monitor if they do change the link. Thank you. Yeah, good idea.
Question.
Yes, Trustee Westerby.
So just question to clarify what it says, boards of education that have adopted motions. Could you speak to what that means, just in layman's terms?
Correct. Sorry, so you might make a motion that you may want to be able to provide additional courses for graduated adults in our school district for enhancements, and that could be a board motion, and that's tuition free. And so that's where the ministry website talks about the fact that boards that have adopted motions may offer specific courses to adults that have graduated. Generally for us in our school district, adults will attend the continuing education program, and we get funded for those courses because those are non-graduated adults.
Okay, trustees, can I have someone make the motion so we can get it up on the table? Trustee Bondar, were you wanting to do that?
I will move that the Board of Education repeal policy 520, adult student fees.
And seconder? Trustee Swanky? Trustee Bondar, do you want to speak to the motion?
I do not.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Trustee Moss.
I just would like to know where if somebody wants to enroll on our website, is there a place where they can find this information? It's a funny policy because it says adult student fees and then it says we don't charge. and then it says but fees may apply.
So Trustee Maz, so first of all, we'll probably have the link to the adult fees on our website, and that's easy to access. If it's a graduate adult, they'll make a phone call, and almost all the time they would go on to University of Fraser Valley because we don't have adult graduate courses in our high schools.
It was actually when I hit this policy that I was like, what is happening? Oh, repeal. Okay, So all those in favor that the Board of Education repeal policy 520 adult student fees? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, and policy, or so 5.4.4, policy 532, extracurricular school sports. This is another motion to repeal the policy. Superintendent?
There's no currency for this policy the way it's written right now, and almost all the, if you look at a redesigned curriculum, all the information is there. So this doesn't give us any information when it comes to a policy.
Can I get someone to make the motion? Oops. Oh, sorry.
I am so on the button tonight. Could I have it up there?
Oh, sorry.
I will move that the Board of Education repeal policy 532, extracurricular school sports.
Seconded by trustee Westerby.
And I don't have anything to say. I think it says it all. Rohan said it all.
All right. Does anyone want to say anything about this? Oh, trustee Westerby.
I think anything of value that might be here, we could build into the potential one we just sent back to EPAC. So speak in favor.
Okay, all those in favor that the Board of Education repeal policy 532, extracurricular school sports? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. One more to go. 5.4.5, policy 602, conducting research. Once again, this is an item to repeal. Superintendent?
Thank you, Board Chair. This policy does have value, but not in the form of a policy. It's been rewritten and we've revamped the admin procedures, and so realistically the policy is redundant at this point. So here's the old policy, and then here is the revised admin procedure. That's quite extensive.
Can I just ask one question? Just for my own clarity, are the admin procedures that don't have policies, where are they located for if someone wants to find them on our website? Are they still under board policies, or are they in a separate section on the website?
They've been separated. If you go onto a public website, you'll have board policies, you'll have the admin procedures. Under the board policy link, there'll be the new policy manual and existing policies. And under the admin procedures, new admin procedures, existing procedures, and they cross things out as we complete the process.
It's that same section of the website.
Correct.
It's just I haven't
Correct.
been looking. Okay, thanks. All right. Can someone make the motion? Oh, trustee Swanky.
Sure, I'd move that the Board of Education repeal policy 602, conducting research studies in schools.
Thank you very much. Seconded by trustee Wester. Trustee Swanky, do you wish to speak to?
Only to echo the comments of the superintendent. I think this is well covered and enhanced, frankly, by the administrative procedures. I'll also just add that those new tabs on the district website do make for some great reading if trustees find themselves so inclined.
All right. Trustee Moss.
I guess the only thing that I'm troubled by is the fact that we have an admin regulation in isolation without a policy. So that means that the board's not speaking to this in any way, shape, or form. And so if a person were to want to conduct research, which is always a good idea for whatever, they're going to be hard pressed to find where this is, and I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with having an admin reg in the absence of a policy, because where's the what or where's the right? So it's all about how, but so the board doesn't speak to this in any way, shape, or form by not having anything written. So could we resolve this somehow by making a simple statement? I don't know. What's the solution to this?
Oh, sorry, Superintendent, do you want to address that question before I move to trustee Prose?
Thank you, Trustee Moss. That's a great question. Previous to this, and I think I got it up, typically we would have our board policies, and then we would have our admin regulations right beneath each policy, if each policy had a regulation. And the new thinking is around the fact that we brought this up for consideration back in March 2020. The revamped policy is going to have unique policy sections. So the 100 section, which is the governance, 200 partners and community. So what's going to happen is you may have some certain policies under the 200 sections. You may have admin procedures that fit under that section too. You're going to have a public website for the policies. We're going to have a public website for the admin procedures. It's going to be accordion style, just like what we have right now under board policies. If I just go click on this, as you can see up there, it'll tell you every single section. And when you go back and you collapse a section, it'll give an index of all of the admin procedures, or policies. So anyone can quickly go and figure out what each section stands for. And they can quickly see, there'll be an index. They can also probably put on the index, will have all of the admin procedures listed, so they can search and find out what they are looking for.
Sorry, just to clarify, you're saying that once it's all finished, they'll be in the same spot instead of separate?
No, there'll be policies, and then there'll be admin procedures right beneath that.
Okay. Can you just clarify, I think, to Trustee Ma's question about how now we have some policies, or sorry, some admin procedures that don't have a policy. Can you just clarify what you're thinking? I know you've been sort of steering the ship with the policy renovation project. Is your thinking that some of the admin procedures are really so operational that they don't require a policy? Is that the thinking?
That is correct. So in the past, we would have policies, but some policies didn't have admin procedures in our existing policy manual. The new thinking is that we're going to have a core number of policies. We'll have multiple admin procedures because they're very operational in nature that don't require a policy to provide the direction. And that's the thinking. So we would probably end up with having, as I said, 85 policies. We would have, I don't know, I'm thinking a number might be 120 admin procedures that are beyond the number of policies they have. And the only connection will be is if you look at the policy numbering tier system, which is the 100 sections of governance, 200 partner and community relations. Well, we'll lump them in that manner, and people can quickly go search the index to see if they're looking for a specific admin procedure. So someone who wants to be able to do some research in our schools, they can go through our admin procedure and figure out. It's going to say partner community relations or students instruction programs. It's going to be one of those two categories. They'll click on that, go through and find the admin procedure. That's the thinking.
Trustee Reed?
Yeah, I sort of have a related question. I did just look up the admin procedure, so it is pretty clear. It is pretty easy to find on the website. I just typed research in the search bar. But I guess I understand that point about policy connecting to admin procedure. So if my question is just through the chair to staff. I learned a new phrase. That from your perspective, does this fall under a value policy, or is it covered by something from a values perspective in the policy, community groups, or I know it doesn't have a direct policy, but are the values that we express in the existing policy under something else already? Is that a clear question?
Superintendent?
I'm not really sure I understood the question, but if I'm correct, our values are under policy 110 under the governance section.
Right.
Your question was around that, how does that drive how we organize a policy manual? Is that?
Suppose I need to refine the thought process here, but I understand the point that the board hasn't spoken to this, but it could be covered by other policies from a values perspective, from a kind of the larger view, from the governance view. Do you feel that it's already covered, or do you feel like it just does not need to be? I guess is my question.
I didn't want to answer the question, sir.
I'm still not.
Okay.
So I guess the way I was interpreting your question was, so we have an administrative procedure about research in schools, and does the board need to speak to values about that? Is this already, are our values as a school district already then directing the way we do research in schools, or is it completely operational?
Is it applicable?
That doesn't, yeah.
So when it comes to how we do business in our school district, regardless of the policy or the procedure, our values which should govern what we do. And I think that's the overarching consideration in all that we do. We talk about a strategic plan, we talk about a policy systems by itself. And so it's not embedded directly, it's embedded in most of the policies that we talk about, and that drives the admin procedure. But the admin procedures are very operational when it comes to language. I hope that clarifies for you.
Trustee Procek?
I think maybe just step back and look at it a little differently. If I come into a school to do research, I'm not interested in the school board's policy because that's just kind of a feel-good, irrelevant in a sense, because all what you're saying is that we have a policy that we believe in research. I want to know the hows and how, I want to know how to get to it. I want the meat so I can get to work on my project. So I wouldn't really care about the school policy, to be honest with you. Like, I think that we have to look at it objectively, where policy is, it's okay, like it doesn't hurt anything, but it's really redundant, because I'm gonna go and find out where the research and where do I need to go and who do I need to speak to. Where policy just says we believe in it. And I just don't know if it's necessary. I think it's a redundant policy.
Trustee Westerby?
Yeah, I would speak in favor of repealing, even though I understand the concerns raised by Trustee Maws. I think this, as it sits right now, really provides no clarity, as the superintendent said. It doesn't provide any direction. Whereas the admin regulation absolutely provides very thorough direction and procedure, which is really imperative when it comes to research and the impact on our schools and on students. So we definitely need much more thorough piece about this. My question is there anything like this policy reflected in the School Act regarding research in schools? Thank you.
Not specifically in the School Act. And at the end of the day, districts would have admin procedures around being able to complete research, and that's the general practice if you just scan other school districts. It's not driven by a value statement, because as educational institutions, we do engage in research on a regular basis. And so almost all the time when I get an email, the question is, where can I find the procedures so I can send my research proposal in? No one ever says, where do I find the policy to understand the policy statement for the school district?
I just had a question before I get to you, Trustee Maws. Is it the term administrative procedures, like a ministry thing, is that just our own school district?
It's what we're going to be using. Our previous language was regulations, admin regulations. So there's a variety used out there.
So I am in support of repealing this motion, or this policy. I don't think it has any value, but I am just, to Trustee Maws's point and some of the other things that have been raised with some of the other policies that we've repealed, I do have a bit of a concern. If I was a parent and had never been a trustee or just a community member and I was going to the board website, I'm not sure if I would understand that the drop-down menu titled Administrative Procedures was the place to look for some of the stuff that's now under there. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to maybe we should be going to partner groups and saying, hey, which term would highlight to you that this is like the place to look for stuff? Or also possibly adding on, well, in addition to that, possibly adding, when you click board policies, a thing at the top saying, you know, if you're looking for things, also check administrative procedures, because some of the things don't fall under policy or something. Because I just think we maybe are creating a situation where the website is a bit confusing and where all the information is there, but people don't know how to find it. So that's two just considerations for another time, but I think the discussion did highlight that for me. Possibly a new term and a reference to whatever that term is on the policy page so that people know how to find stuff.
Thank you. Is this policy connected to the MDI, the EDI, the McCreary survey, and any of the other surveys or research that go on in our schools?
Those are instruments done by organizations that work with us. We get the data to use within our system by itself. This would refer to people doing their master's projects or their doctorate projects, and they're doing some research within their university or in a school district. requesting permission to be able to interview students or staff members to collect data to be able to write their thesis.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure. So, wow, that's valuable. I think we need to keep this.
Sorry. Trustee Reed.
Yeah, thank you. So I've kind of been sitting and mulling on what it is exactly I think I was trying to communicate. I can think of research projects that are not aligned with the school district's values. I'm thinking of things that are not trauma-informed practice. I was handed a survey the other day to give to Indigenous youth with language that was extremely colonial and harmful and triggering, and I handed it back. And I think there are things that are exploitive. There are things that there's research that is not focused on improving student outcomes. There's research that comes from corporations. I can think of a lot of instances where the board's values should specifically be spoken to. The fact that we're not just, I understand that admin procedures cover some of those things, but I think that we have values. And I think that we need to state how this benefits our students. I think that is something that it has value. And I do think it is important. I'm not entirely comfortable with repealing it. I don't like it as written.
So, just to clarify for you, the procedure would be to make a motion to refer if you're wanting to have this policy, but not in this form. And if you vote against repeal, we just have this on the books still. So, just for your own knowledge, that's, yeah. Sorry, I think Trustee Swanky, did you speak to this already?
I opened debate.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Second time appropriate.
Trustee Westerby.
I just want to ask a question further to Trustee Reed's point. In the administrative procedures, there is a step that is they must apply for permission. It's I assumed, but I feel like it's safest to ask to the superintendent in that application for permission. I would love to imagine that making sure that these things are trauma informed, things like that, is built into that application for permission and into the administrative regulation. I guess that's not a question, it's more of a statement.
Superintendent?
That's a valid statement, and I think just from my experience, people will send their proposals to us. Then it's for us to look at those proposals and then respond back. Almost all the time, there's an ethics commission at each university that they have to go through in order for their proposals to be approved to do research in our school system. We can easily add some of that language to the admin procedure, and I do appreciate that.
Trustee Bonder.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say if any of the research proposals or activities come from a post-secondary institution, they will have gone through ethics at that post-secondary institution. However, the way this reads, it sounds like it's, open to research from any places, including private industry, which sounds like may have been what Trustee Reed experienced. And I would agree, there are reasons why universities and post-secondary institutions spend a lot of money on ethics and doing human research ethically. Asking trauma and having trauma-informed practice is extremely important. So I guess I would also wonder about what kind of questions we're asking these researchers.
Superintendent, can you speak to that?
I could, thank you. We probably get about 15 requests per school year, and I'm going to tell you almost all of it are from post-secondary institutions. As a rule, if there's an external private enterprise, my answer is no.
Yeah, okay. Trustee Swanky, were you wanting to speak a final time to that?
If I may, Chair. I've spoken to what I perceive as the benefits of repeal of the proposed policy. I did want to address a couple of the comments that were raised. I think that the suggestion that there is an absence of direction from the board in the administrative procedures isn't entirely accurate when you consider that all work of the district would align with policy 110, which outlines those core values: equity, inclusion, kindness, collaboration, and innovation. It would also be work that aligns with the strategic plan, which in it commits ourselves to work of anti-racism, work of decolonization and reconciliation, support of work, hard work and equity. And so that would be the expectation of this board, that any research does align with those priorities. To the point, I think, about administrative procedures in the absence of policy, and please, if staff want to issue a correction here, it's appreciated. Administrative procedures may be in reaction to direction from the ministry. There may not be direction from the board through policy, but there may be an operational need that's outlined by the Ministry of Education that needs to be addressed. I'd also point to the previous iteration of the policy book. We had administrative procedures in the absence of policy. So we never had a policy 703, but we have several administrative procedures that outline vandalism, considerations around vandalism, and they existed in that book in the absence of policy. So I don't believe this is new practice. I think the feedback provided to the board from the board through staff is valuable, but I hope that the board is reassured that we do provide input through those core value statements, through a strategic plan, and just through the values of the district that we work to instill through our work.
Superintendent, do you want to respond? Just, I think that was a pretty accurate summary of what you were saying, but just since it was so.
Thank you, Trustee Swinky. I think you're bang on with your comment. We've had multiple admin regulations that were not connected to policy, but generally past practice was policy connected to regulation. Recently, I think there's been multiple directions from the ministry that require us to write a policy or an admin procedure. It's more connected to the ministry. I have to say, though, and I think going back to policy 110, this board spent a lot of time on the strategic plan and also the policy. I have to say we've embedded a lot of policy 110 in most of our policies, and that thread continues onwards in all the work that we have to do. I do appreciate the feedback around the trauma-informed lens around research and all looking at from an inclusive lens. And I think even with the admin procedure, we want to make sure that our actions align back with policy 110. So I can reassure the Board of Education. I think the purpose of the policy analysis was us to be really focused on policies, as opposed to having a booklet full of documentation that we never paid attention to. I think that is now changing for us. We want to be very mindful of the number of policies we have, but also be very mindful of the admin procedures connected to policies, also connected to policy 110 and back to a strategic plan, then going back, connections back to the work that we do in our schools. And I think that brings back to the whole notion of the governance core as an organization. Why do we do what we do on a regular basis? So, thank you.
Okay, not seeing any further hands. All those in favor of repealing policy 602, conducting research? Opposed? Thank you, the motion carries. Okay, on to meeting summaries. Those are in the package. And now we are on to public participation, comments or questions concerning the agenda. Same rules as before. Anyone who wants to speak, come up to the mic. All right, not seeing any. Thank you all for coming. Our next Board of Education meeting is on June 13th, 2023 at 5:30. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks.